What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Ascent Athlete Podcast, where we're talking all things baseball. Today, I'm super excited to have our director of hitting on, Alex Kramer. He's extremely knowledgeable. I've learned a lot from him in my short time here, and I'm super excited to dive deep into an episode with him today. Let's do it. Alex Kramer, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's get into a little bit of your background, kind of your journey, how you got to Ascent, what was your life like before Ascent. Just hit us with it.
So basically, once I got home from college, I was working a door-to-door sales job, and I was completely miserable. Saw an ad for a job at a local training facility over in New Jersey, so I was like, that sounds like a lot of fun, getting back into baseball. Took it, was there for 4 years doing lessons, group training, coaching some travel teams, also doing a little bit of admin work behind the scenes as well. After a couple years, I was kind of like looking for a little bit more of a challenge with things. So I dove into the college realm. I got hired at Stockton University as an assistant coach. I was there for 2 years. Then I switched over to Eastern University as a grad assistant for one season while I was still going back and forth with that same facility. And then, same kind of thing. I was just looking for more and more challenge with baseball, not just like a player talent standpoint, but from just like the people that I surrounded myself with from that standpoint. So I saw an ad for Ascent hiring a hitting instructor. I think that was like late December or early January. It's like December of 21 or January 22. Um, Applied for the hitting instructor job and luckily got it. And so I'm going on year 3 right now here. My first 2 were somewhat as a assistant director of hitting, while also continuing to coach in the college realm. I was with Villanova last year as the volunteer assistant, helped out with their catchers, helped out with their hitting staff as well. Um, Over this past summer, just loved what we were doing here at Ascent so much. I was looking for any opportunity I could to devote more of my time, more specifically to this. Um, and luckily that kind of came about and found myself now as the director of hitting. So I'm able to come in here basically every single day and get to work with our guys.
El Jefe. I love it. So I think that's a really good transition as well into the next question. But as the director of hitting, you see so many different athletes every day, right? So many different movement patterns, so many different swings, so many different things to fix, so many things that are good already, right? What are your general hitting philosophies, and kind of what do you really try to ingrain into the kids here at Ascent?
Yeah. You definitely hit it on the head, man. Everybody that comes in is going to be moving in some kind of different way. Some similarities between different guys, but like for the most part, everybody's unique. So I try to focus with every single guy on: are we swinging at good pitches? Are we squaring the ball up as often as possible? And when we do square it up, do we have the potential to do some kind of damage? And I think, regardless of how you move, if you're able to do those 3 things, especially in game, obviously, you're going to have success and you're going to be able to play this game at a high level for a pretty long time.
For sure, for sure, and even just getting into playing the game at a high level, right? When we look at what's happening in the big leagues right now, guys are actively trying to hit the ball harder, actively trying to hit it in the air more. We're trying to make good swing decisions, and like the overall goal is to get on base so we score runs. And the more bases we can get per plate appearances, the better, right? So, how do you kind of translate those specific KPIs that are happening in the big leagues with, hey, bases are good, run values, all that stuff? How do we kind of scale that down to what's happening in Ascent?
Honestly, I'm not sure if there's much really scaling that goes into it because at the end of the day, baseball is baseball across all levels. A double is super valuable, at the big league level, and it's super valuable at the little league level, at the college level, and the high school level. So if we can get guys, bought into the plan of like, hey man, big leaguers are big and strong, they hit hard, they're able to get extra base hits, and if they're not hitting a ton of home runs necessarily, they're probably guys that are getting on base one way or another very, very often. So if we can just preach to guys that like, hey, that's how successful hitters operate at the big league level, at the D1 level, at the D2, D3, the JUCO, at every level of baseball, it kind of just trickles down, and it's kind of, I think it makes it a little bit more fun for the guys too, because it's not like, hey, you're doing a watered down version of, you know, what big leaguers do. Like, oh, you can't do what they do. Don't worry about that. We're going to do your own thing. Where it's like, hey, man, you guys go, you go home, you watch Bryce Harper on TV, you see how he's swinging, how he's moving, what his approach is. We're going to work on that exact thing. You're going to pretend that you're Bryce Harper when you're standing in the batter's box. And I think that helps out a ton too. Not condensing it down and making lower level kids feel like they are lower level, and just make it them understand like, hey, you're playing the same game that dudes who are 20 to 40 years old, Hall of Famers, that they're playing.
Right. No, that's really cool. I like the way you put that. Um, and so I think that kind of leads into the next question as well. But with the wide variety of different talent ranges that we get in here and different, skill sets, what is the biggest challenge that you have as director of hitting back there?
I think it's always going to be messaging and like control of the information flow. We're super blessed here. Obviously, we can collect a ton of data on basically every single guy that comes in, whether they're an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid or one of our college or pro guys. So getting a feel for like, you know, when can I kind of get on the gas pedal a little bit with somebody to make sure that a message is getting across properly? When do I have to ease off the gas pedal a little bit? Some guys want to kind of dive into the data. They want to hear some of the numbers. They want to see the proof behind what we're saying. And some guys think once they get into that, it just adds a lot of mess in their brain, and it's a little bit too much noise. So we want to stick to more of the external goals. Hey, just hit the ball hard, hit it high, try to square it up, that kind of thing. So finding that good balance of feeling like, hey, on the one hand, we have all these utility or all these resources, we have all this data. Let's make sure that we're using it effectively, but then also being like, well, we don't want to just overload every single kid that comes in here with all of that data. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges for me always, is just finding myself, doing a lot of talking and being like, man, am I losing this kid's attention because of what I'm saying? Or am I hitting on the right notes, or am I putting the right message across with what I'm saying to this player? Because whatever I'm saying, or whatever we're saying as coaches, whatever the data is showing us is great. The player is going to interpret that based on whatever their previous experiences are, just how they interpret words, and then how their body moves according to how their brain is telling it to move. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong between me saying something and a kid implementing it into his swing. So learning how to kind of navigate that, and get a feel for which kids can you go a little deeper with, which kids do you need to ease off the gas pedal a little bit with, and just how to alleviate that across the board.
And I think it's really funny how you mentioned up just like messaging, because um, it's really interesting to me to understand how no matter what we say as coaches, the kid's always going to believe the messaging that makes sense to them the most, right? And they have their own narrative to a certain extent of like what kind of player they are and like what they're really good at. And even if the numbers are like saying something completely different, that's almost like a strength and a disadvantage all at the same time, just because I mean, like even the other day, we were looking at some blast numbers, and the swing profile is, hey, this guy should hit high pitches really well. And then we talk to the kid, and it's like, oh, I crushed the low pitch. And we're just like,
Yeah, sure.
sure you do. You know what I mean? And like, we're not here to change that narrative. We're here to encourage that narrative, but like help them navigate through that. And I love the way that you put that. But messaging is so important to these kids, and it truly shapes how they play and what they do on the field.
100%. If I could like jump in more on that,
Yeah.
very specific example, and it was probably a couple months ago, earlier this summer, a younger kid who was telling me basically he'd always been told he's a contact hitter, he's a contact hitter, he's a contact hitter. So flips, BP, the couple stuff that we were doing that day, everything was like super low effort, low energy swings, making some barrels, but like, we're hitting a couple little line drives, some hard ground balls, things like that. And then it's just like, hey man, what if you tried to hit the ball hard? What if you tried to hit a double? It's like, all right, cool, let me try that out. Not that every single swing now is a double, but it's like a lot more balls are coming off the bat with a lot more authority. And it's like, yeah, dude, if you take that kid and you tell him you're a contact hitter just because he's small, or if you tell him like, hey, you can't do that because XYZ for no reason, the kid's going to believe that. and then he's going to move and shape his personality or his makeup as a baseball player around that perception of himself. But if you just kind of let him go, let the Bronco buck, as they say, and then now see what that kid's true capabilities are, it's a lot easier to dial somebody back than it is to like just stunt a kid from at the very beginning and make him have this perception of himself all the way through, as he starts to develop. And then now, trying to get a kid who's not used to being high effort and trying to get him to be high effort.
Yeah, 100%. And even just going deeper into that, right? A lot of the stuff that you specifically do back there, I've heard you preach. Do something challenging today. So many times to the kids, always, right? And that's part of shaping it, right? So let's get into why we believe so strongly about making training harder than the game.
Yeah, I mean, simple enough. The first thing that I've always been sensitive to, even back when I was at the old facility I was working at, um, obviously very rampant these days with the amount of training that there is available to kids, is the idea of like a cage hitter or a training facility hitter where like, kids can go in a cage and they can hit balls all day. The hit tracks lights up, everything looks awesome. And then they go out to games and it's not so good. And it's like, yeah, well, that's because that kid works and he hits flips and he hits T work and he does easy BP and it's like super easy in practice. And there's just this negative aura around, a training facility that seems to produce kids that do awesome in the cage, not as well in game. So I feel very sensitive to that and don't want to be perceived like that. So it's like, hey, we're going to do super, super hard stuff regardless of kids' skill level. I'm going to, encourage them to do things that are hard for them. Doesn't mean every kid's going to have to hit off 100-mile-an-hour, light flight, hoppy fastballs. But it means, if a kid is used to hitting off my 35-mile-an-hour BP, go hit off 80 miles an hour from full distance, right? Challenge yourself in that way. Again, to make it harder or make it hard in here so it's easy when you go out to the game. Um, I think that's just like a huge, huge piece of it is creating kids that like are good with coming in here and failing because they know that when they go out to the field, it's going to pay dividends. And being in the game will feel easier, or at the very least, they'll feel more comfortable in game because no kid throws a pitch that moves the way that a light flight moves coming out of a big hack attack, right? So if they can convince themselves, like, hey, this kid's got the, this pitcher on the mound doesn't have as nasty stuff as I've hit off of before, boom, that's confidence right there. And confidence is going to be everything for them. Um, I think another piece of it too, and kind of piggybacking off what we were just saying about like how kids perceive themselves. I remember reading a while ago about like it was actually like a thing about like dads and how to work with like really really young kids getting into baseball and like should you play catch with your kid. And an interesting point that I saw was one of these coaches mentioned like, I don't play catch with my, I don't know, 4 or 5 year old kid because, what ends up happening is I don't want to hurt the kid. So I'm going to throw to him with little lobs like this to make sure that he can handle himself. And this kid who's trying to learn these movement patterns, what's he going to do? He's going to be like, oh, the way to throw a baseball is by throwing light and lobbing like this. So this coach pointed out, he was like, what would be really good to do instead of playing catch all the time, just throw a ball as hard as you can into a net. And then, give the kid a ball and say, hey, do the same thing. Throw that ball as hard as you possibly can into that net. So now they are seeing you doing, a challenging thing, getting yourself to move fast and throw a ball hard, and they're mapping themselves that way. So again, I think same kind of idea. Like if we put kids in scenarios where they're going to be challenged and where things are going to be tough and their blood's going to be pumping and nerves are going to be going and they got to think a little bit or they got to shut their brain off, even better yet, when they go out to a game, they're going to be used to that feeling. It's not going to be the first time that they've, felt those competitive juices firing since the last time they played a baseball game. And I think that's the biggest key is just like bridge the gap between the training and the actual game.
Absolutely. And you and I have talked a little bit about this as well, but I'm kind of working my way through a book, the inner game of tennis right now, and I don't know if you've started it or not yet, but you did get the book, which I think is awesome, right? Like we have like our own little Ascent book club, which is funny, but um, in the book it talks about, man, isn't it funny? And like it's specific to tennis, but it's just mental game in general, right? Where I know for me, when my dad took me to a baseball game growing up, and that week of baseball I played after was always better. And for whatever reason, it was I'm watching professionals do it. I'm watching how they're moving, and I'm like, okay, like yeah, let's try to move like that. So a lot of kids are really visual learners, like monkey see, monkey do, and yeah, like I think that's a really great example of show them the way, do it the way. Don't playing catch with the baby lob throw. Like how much good is that really going to do? Who knows? Like probably not much. Letting that kid rip a couple throws into a net and like figure out how his body's moving and like what movement patterns to do. Like yes, yes. Now now we're talking about ingraining some stuff. Yeah, exactly. Um, and I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the core training principles that we have here at Ascent. Um, and so something that is a really big staple for us back in hitting is bat speed, right? Let's dive into why bat speed training is like A1, A plus, and why it's not just hey, let's swing as hard as we can and see if we can hit it. So let's get into some of the intricacies of a little bit to like help people understand a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. My thought process and the way that I've been as of late, like communicating this to people, I view bat speed the same way that the guys in the weight room are going to view your squat, your deadlift, any kind of strength building movement where we want to see some kind of weight production or what's it called? Anytime we want to see your weights going up over time,
Progressive
right?
overload.
Yeah, progression. That's the word that I was looking for. Thank you. Um, if you want to get your deadlift up, doing deadlift once a week at the same weight every single time, probably not going to be a good strategy to get there. You need to be doing the right movements, the right weights, giving yourselves new challenges every single week, adding more volume, working on moving things fast, all that kind of fun stuff, and have that progression to build yourself up. And you have to do it consistently. If you want to build your bat speed, hitting 1 day a week is not going to get it done. Whatever implements, tools, the overload, underload, all that stuff that we do, if you do that once a week, you're not going to see very many results, if any. Maybe some marginal changes over time, just as your body continues to grow. So the first piece of it is just like, hey, to get your bat speed to go up, we need you hitting 3 to 5 times a week, if not, six or so. Obviously, depending on different levels, kids are driving themselves all the time. They can't get here all the time. But again, you have to be doing it consistently. You have to be hitting consistently, doing your bat speed training consistently to see your bat speed go up. And what does every coach for the entirety of the history of baseball, what does everybody preach about how to improve at hitting is you got to hit often. So, boom, right off the bat, you want to see your bat speed number go up, you got to hit often. If you hit often, not only will that bat speed hopefully go up, but your overall ability to hit and make contact is probably going to go up as well. Um, the other piece of it is just like the manner by which we go about our bat speed training, right? We use the axe bat speed trainers. It's a handle loaded bat, end loaded bat, and then an underloaded bat followed by their own bat. I've seen studies that talk about swinging differently weighted and differently sized implements are really, really good for building just like overall skill at that task, right? So we do our overload underload training, we do long bat short bat on our recovery days, things like that. So now not only are you like yes training the number that is your bat speed, but you're also training your overall ability to just take an implement, in this case is your bat, and deliver it to a moving projectile, which is the baseball. So the way I see it, bat speed training, if done properly, and I think we do it pretty good, covers every single base that everybody preaches in hitting. You want bat to ball skills, swing differently weighted bats. You want challenge, you want to learn how to hit in game, do your bat speed days off of our high velo, off of our breaking ball machines, do it off of BP or short box or whatever it is. And then if you want that bat speed, your power potential to go up, so when you do square the ball up, it actually goes somewhere. Boom, we're doing our overload, underload. We're teaching ourselves how to be strong. We're teaching ourselves how to move quick. We're building functional movement in that very specific context of the swing. So again, I preach it so hard, and I think what gets lost in the shuffle a lot, especially with people like now that bat speed and bat metric numbers are being available to the public at the big league level, is we take too much account into what that specific number is on that swing. Oh, Giancarlo Stanton just hit a home run. He swung the bat 83 miles an hour. Not every kid needs to swing the bat 80 miles an hour plus, right? Not every big leaguer does. Very few of them do, in fact. right? But what went into him building up that bat speed? He probably got in the weight room a heck of a lot, right? You just look at Giancarlo Stanton; he's a big dude, right? He was in the weight room a lot. He's probably hitting a lot. He learned how to square the ball up often while swinging at that high bat speed, and that turned him from, I'm not saying at any point he was this, but you take a guy who doesn't swing very hard, who has really good bat to ball skill, and you just add in some more bat speed, some more power going into the ball, more energy transfer there. And now we go from a singles, some doubles guy to maybe some doubles and homers here and there. So yeah, I think just like not taking the number itself just on its own and just what develops the number over time, right? Because there's a lot of guys in the league, a lot of guys at every level that swing hard, a lot of guys that don't swing super hard, and they all play at the same level. They all play the same game. They're all trying to do the same thing.
100%. And I think even specifically when we talk about the axe bat speed trainers that we use with the different weighted implements, there's always one bat that each kid swings particularly well. And and like sometimes it changes from kid to kid, right? But um, more often than not, kids are going to swing one of the two heavier bats well.
Yeah.
And that comes down to like why? Well, like they have to sequence up better,
Right.
and they have to like organize their body in a way to be on time for a moving object, like that time constraint, right? And it's hilarious to me every time they get that like blue axe bat in their hand, how often it's like, why aren't I hitting this ball 500 feet?
Right.
Well, you're out of sequence now because you're trying to move like extremely fast and like your body doesn't know what it's doing anymore because it doesn't have that weight. Um, so yeah, like we're training bat speed, we're training bat to ball with different weighted implements and different length implements, but we're also teaching sequencing just by giving the kids a different weighted implement. Um, and that's like the ultimate tool, right? Like if you sequence up well, like you're gonna have a somewhat good swing, and like the swing's gonna look different for everyone. But I love the weighted bats. Like I think it covers a lot of bases, and it really gets guys going in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And even going off that there, like maybe taking it a step further here is just like I'm still at this point, I'm not convinced that anybody in the world, when they're hitting a baseball, a live pitch in game with that time constraint, actually, feels the movements that their body is doing, right? It's all subconscious, or the vast majority of it is subconscious movement. I've taught myself to move like this. Now I'm just picking up the baseball. My eyes are picking up the baseball, the location, the speed, and I'm just arriving at contact at the right time. So again, using that specific example of the blue bat, kids feel that bat and they're like, oh, it's so light, dude. I could swing this so hard. And now all of their thought process goes into these. And we get that super pushy. They lose their sequence. They lose what was good about their swing when they weren't thinking about their hands or realizing that their hands can whip through the zone so fast. So it's like it like automatically gives these teaching moments without us having to jump in and tell a kid, this is what you're feeling or this is what you should feel. Like, no, it's the kid being like, man, I swung that green bat like really, really good. I picked up this blue bat. It feels awesome in my hand. I can whip it through the zone. And suddenly I'm just wearing out the shortstop with grounder, grounder, grounder. It's like maybe I should try to swing the blue bat the way that I swung the green bat. And now suddenly that sequence comes back with the lighter bat. We have that extra speed, and it's like that's when the ball really starts jumping off. And kids, again, teach themselves how to properly sequence, how to. I like saying like forget about your hands, forget about what's going on here. Just focus on see the baseball, see its location, its speed, and just arrive at contact. And I think they're such an awesome tool for again letting kids find that answer on their own.
Yes, yes, and I think it covers a lot of bases. And the last thing that I really want to touch on with you before we wrap up is I hear you preach all the time back there. Swing decisions, adjustability, being on time, right? Like if we're able to do those kind of two to three things, we're going to be able to hit the ball well. Are there any like mechanical kind of pillars that you really stand by back there, or is it like those three principles that we want to have adjustable hitters through, or like what are your kind of thoughts on that?
I think first and foremost, like those three things are paramount to any mechanical bias that I may have. Right. We talk about it all the time. I guess I could name drop Ryan McCarty here. He's one of our pro guys. I believe he's in Double A right now with Toronto, having a really good season so far. Super excited for the kid. Very much that HLP, very back legged, snap the barrel kind of thing. And like, is that the kind of way that I myself teach swinging and hitting? Not necessarily, but it works for him. And he's able to be on time and he swings at pretty good pitches. And when he makes contact, the ball tends to go a pretty long ways. So it's like, hey, if that works for you, let's keep that, right? Let's be comfortable. Let's not have to think about where your body's going. We can maybe be aware of what our misses are going to be, but like if we have those three things down, the movement is way less important. The key is though, when we don't have one or multiple of those three things locked in, that's when we can start looking at like, all right, is there some kind of mechanical hindrance that is not allowing us to be on time, or that is like making us a little bit jumpy and chasing, bad pitches pretty often. When we get into there, my biases, I could say two things always jump out to me. One is going to be posture, just where are we set up with our top half, and are we able to maintain some kind of angle with our top half from foot strike all the way through our swing. I know we always talk about like squatty versus hingy guys. I'm starting to learn again that's not the kind of thing that matters terribly much. It's more about like, do you maintain whatever spot you get to? And if we can do that, great. If we can rotate from a very consistent, spine angle, if you want to call it, I think we're going to be pretty consistent with our barrel delivery into the zone, which should help make us a little bit more adjustable, maybe catch up to some velo a little bit more because we're going to get better entry. The other piece I always look at, especially like when we're doing our evals, is again that entry of the barrel into the zone. What are our hands? What are our arms doing? Um, One of my biggest, I guess, like checkpoints that I'm looking for is just about every guy when they get to a loaded spot, their back elbow is somewhere behind their hands. Now, whether it's a little high, a little low, may change player to player, but it's going to be somewhere behind their hands. And I want to see as they start to turn and fire, do the hands stay relatively still while the back elbow starts working underneath? And what we typically, phrase this as is, are you getting on plane early? Are you getting into the zone early? Um, Again, one of those things where there's a lot of different ways, a lot of variance to the exact way that it gets there. But most guys that are able to swing consistently and get productive ball flight consistently are going to have some level of that ability where their hands kind of hang back here again, forgetting about what these are doing back here, allowing that to happen behind me so that I can enter the zone a little bit cleaner and a little bit more consistently. So those would probably be my two, like, the very first thing I'm always going to look at from a mechanical standpoint is, are we maintaining whatever level of posture we get to at foot strike, and how is our barrel entering the zone? If those two things look pretty clean and we're still not really making good swing decisions, or we're chasing a little bit, we're not squaring the ball up, then we may go into switches, talk about maybe different setups, probably more so going to be a little bit better planning in terms of like what my approach is, what pitch am I looking for, where am I going to try to hit it. But I would say, yeah, those are the two main things that I tend to look at with guys.
I love it. I love it. And I love how we go about business back there. Like, we're not super mechanics oriented. We're more movement oriented. And every kid's going to look different. I can't tell you how many times I've said that. um, it is true. Like people move differently. And we, yeah, exactly, shocker. We don't want to take what you do naturally out of it. The last thing we want to do in general anywhere here at Ascent, not just in hitting, but is create robots. I think that's one of my biggest fears is like getting an evaluator coming back to me being like, oh yeah, this kid kind of looked robotic. It's like dang it, you know what I mean? Like, we're doing something wrong. We want those movement patterns to kind of flow in their own respective right. Um, well, yeah. Hey, man, thank you so much for hopping on. I thought we did a lot of really good information here. I thought people got a really good insight into what we do, specifically in the hitting department here at Ascent. And I'm super excited to get this out to the viewers and have them listen.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys.